Awesome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first ever episode of a new series that the Zoomy stream is going to be doing for you guys called Between Two Lines. I'm going to explain a little bit more of what that means for you guys later. It's an exciting new series that we've picked up for the Twitch stream for you guys here, and really excited about it. For our first episode, please welcome Walker Ryan, founder of Old Friends, pro skateboarder, here to talk a little bit about what Between Two Lines is. With myself, Donnie Longton. I'm the district manager at Zoomies in South Chicago, currently streaming to you guys live from store 229, Chicago Ridge, South Chicago, Illinois. Myself, the team will be here until 7 o'clock. Stop by, say what's up. We'd love to chat with you and love to talk a little bit about some of the topics we're covering in the stream. Pretty exciting. This new stream series we're going to be doing, Between Two Lines. It's really going to be our first opportunity to bridge the gap between how many professional skateboarders explore other avenues of creativity through writing. And our first episode, again, special guest Walker Ryan, founder of Old Friends, pro skateboarder skating for Sovereign Skateboards. Couldn't be more excited. Walker, thank you so much for being here, man. How are you?
Donnie, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be a part of it, especially the initial offering that you guys are doing. This is cool.
Yeah, first episode. It's a really exciting series. It's so awesome to hear that people that are already so passionate about something like skating are now expanding those passions into things like writing, which is pretty amazing that you've been able to do so. And it's actually turned into not only an amazing travel blog, but also your first ever book. Is that right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So no, this is fun. I mean, I've been into mainly just reading my whole life, and over the last 10-15 years I've just started to venture more into writing on my own, and it's been a lot of fun. I encourage anyone out there who's interested to do it.
That's great.
But excited for the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So with that said, we're going to dig into some questions. Before we get started on that, number one, please send your questions across in the chat. We're going to do our best to answer some of those. Pay attention to the chat for some additional stash codes, where you might have an opportunity to win yourself your own copy of Walker Ryan's book called Top of Mason, which is pretty exciting. So keep your eyes in the chat, pay attention to that stuff for codes, things like that. Walker, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what's your gig, what you're doing right now. And I think it would be pretty awesome if you told everybody where you're streaming from.
Cool. We'll start with that. I am currently streaming from a little island called Sifnos in Greece. I'm currently 2.5 months into a little work from home experiment with my wife, Whitney. We're moving basically every few days. We've been all around Europe and just kind of holing up in Airbnbs, working New York hours, and skating in between when I can.
It's amazing.
And so that's where I'm at now.
Okay.
But I am from Napa, California, which is north of it's technically St. Helena, a little small town north of San Francisco. And yeah, where I live is a trickier question because I'm technically living in New York, but I haven't really been there in a very long time, and I'm not even really sure when I'm going to be back. But yeah, that's the gist of it. And just working every day on everything involved with Old Friends and writing and skating. That's pretty much the gig.
It's amazing. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's the dream, right? To focus on the passions, the things you're passionate about. That's amazing. Let's dig into the book a little bit. So Walker, if I had a book report due tomorrow on Top of Mason, and you were just to give me the Cliff's Notes, what are some of the things you would tell me about the book?
Well, first of all, the Cliff Notes, if I was really going to be giving you that, would be giving away the story, and I just can't do that right now with you, Donnie. I would.
Fair enough.
No, the gist of it is, I have the book right here. This is Top of Mason. Fun fact about the cover, I know this wouldn't be in the book report, but it's art by Sibo Walker, fellow pro skateboarder and Old Friends crooked rider. And also Old Friends co-founder Chris did all the design. So this is like an Old Friends collaborative project right here. But it's a San Francisco adventure story that is about a skateboarder, but a skateboarder who's a little bit past his prime in trying to go pro, but never made it. And he's going through a breakup, and he just gets into some wild San Francisco adventures. And I'll just leave it at that. but it's
Nice.
it's meant to just be a fun read, super accessible. It's nothing too heavy, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really cool. It's been out for a few months now, and tons of skaters are reading it and telling me they like it, and it's been just really cool. It was a nerve-wracking thing to actually put it out, but having it out now, it's been like really rewarding. So
Yeah, 2 chapters in, I'm sure there are so many people that can relate to some of the encounters that you talk about within the book, whether it be afraid to encounter that ex that you may have just broken up with, or afraid to encounter those crazies on the street that you run into every once in a while. So it's super relatable, which is really exciting about the book. So I'm excited to finish it up, and it's been amazing so far. So
thanks for
when did you?
in.
Yeah, absolutely. When did you start writing it? What was the starting process like? How did you get into writing a book?
Yeah, so I had always thought conceiving of a novel, just writing something that's totally fictional was like impossible. It just was something that seemed so where do you start with a story? And basically, I just thought it'd be fun to try. And it started with just story about a guy never made it in skateboarding who's working as a maid in a hotel. And that was just the gist of it. I thought, oh, you know what? In San Francisco, it's so hard to find an affordable place to live. Like, what if you were just living in a hotel instead? And that was sort of just the motivation for the story. And then I just started picking away at it. And it was just a very slow process. I mean, that was like 2014 that I wrote the first couple chapters. And, I would show it after I got a significant chunk done. I showed it to some people who read a lot of novels, and some people who write themselves. My grandmother's actually a novelist who's cranked out 20 plus books in her career. Wow. And just got some good feedback, and they were like, yeah, keep going with it. And so a few years after, I finished it after a few years, but really that was almost like the beginning of it, because then it was just a whole lot of revisions. And so I was just getting notes, getting feedback, changing things. I mean, so much changed from the first version I finished to what I've eventually put out. And yeah, I mean, it was time consuming, but I always sort of put it I compare it to a video part. Video parts sometimes just take years out of your life. You might be thinking about them every day, but you don't actually work on it until you have those good spurts. A skate trip, or just a period of time where you just really crank things out. And yeah, I mean, it was just patience, sit on it, write a bunch. And just really my routine was if I could, try to write a little bit every single morning. That was what I did. But naturally there were gaps, periods of time when I didn't, and just kind of sat on it and waited for the inspiration, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of the long version. Long answer.
No, that's great. No, it speaks to that ambition of trying to accomplish something that you haven't done before. Speaking of accomplishments, finishing a degree in sociology while also becoming pro, what was that process like? One and the same, if we're going to talk about some of the writings that you had to do. And I guess, how did that degree in sociology influence some of your writing?
Yeah, so I would say that, my going to school, going to college, really it all started in high school. I mean, high school was very demanding for me, almost more demanding, I'd say, than college. Wow. And, figuring out a way to balance college and all the responsibilities I had there and everything that I needed to do for skating to kind of keep putting out video parts, getting photos in magazine, doing everything that was needed there. It's just that juggle, and figuring out time management is basically what it comes down to. As for my actual degree, sociology, every assignment was writing. And so there was a lot of practice there. I wouldn't say it relates to this book necessarily, because writing fiction is sort of an entirely different beast that I actually didn't study in school, but maybe I should have. But it was still just, I think it's one of those things where it's I'm required to write so much that it just becomes a little bit more natural the more you do it. And then when you get a chance to write something you really are interested in, I mean, not that I wasn't interested in the subjects in school, but it's just a different thing. So totally. Yeah, that was
That's awesome. Speaking of the different types of writing that you've done, not only do you have the book that's out, which is amazing, but you also have a travel blog where you talk about some stories on the road, whether it's filming skate parks and stuff like that. Talk to me a little bit about the differences between some of the nonfiction that you've written for your travel blog versus some of the fiction that you've written for the book. What are the differences there?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like, I would say that, going on skate trips and turning what was like, a weird little situation or an adventure or some kind of like summary of what happened.
Like almost stealing a beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, I love that you read them. That was a little one in Japan. But that sort of gave me the, I don't want to say chops, but like practice in maybe writing something totally fictional. So it was definitely those stories that, fortunately, a lot of the motivation for those too were like, oh, maybe this will be an article for a magazine. And some of them ended up in Thrasher or other little Transworld or little pieces. And but even just writing them just for the sake of doing it, I mean, a lot of them never went anywhere, and it just felt good to just put it on my own little website, and see what people thought of the story.
Nice.
So it's just like, I almost look at it like practice. And a big thing that I always tell people for, who want to maybe get into writing, I have the travel blog, but I also had a skate video blog, where it was like, I'm going to post about my favorite skate video that comes out and write something, like the first thing that comes to mind. And it's just practice, like it was nice to give myself something to just do, to hold myself accountable, just to practice like you would anything you're getting into. And so, I mean, that was definitely, it's not the greatest. I wouldn't recommend the writing to anybody or to read. Like, I wouldn't recommend it as reading, but it was good for me to just like do something every day. I was inspired. And what inspired me was just like watching skate videos. So.
Nice. Were you a creative person growing up? Like, did you focus on like creativity, like when you were a younger kid, like kind of before high school into college? Were you always kind of your toe in the writing pool, or what were you focused on?
Before, it's interesting because before I discovered skating, I was like obsessed with drawing, and I was like, I was young, but it was really like my passion. And for some reason, when skateboarding took over, it was like it like sucked out that creative part of my brain or something like that, and all I wanted to do was skate. But I always was interested in art on the side as well. It just like sort of left me as like that number one creative pursuit. And it really wasn't, like when it comes to writing, like it wasn't till much later, like really after college, that I really pushed myself to do it in a creative way, I'd say, like in fiction. So it's kind of interesting. I wouldn't describe myself as like a super creative, but I definitely feel like skateboarding, allows for that, whether it's videos, whether it's, editing or just being in them. Like that was always a part of me. So
yeah. How much would you say of the fiction book is based on nonfiction characters? Like how many people have you encountered kind of in some of your journeys? Have you said, okay, I'm going to take little bits of this character, I'm going to take little bits of this character, and they're going to make these characters in the book? How much would you say is influenced by some of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's always a funny one, because I really, the characters are basically all composites of people I've encountered, and definitely like took liberties and sort of went in different directions. But, skateboarders are just, they're like some of the, in my opinion, some of the most interesting people I've met. And there are some really close friends of mine, people I've encountered briefly through, being on teams with them or going on skate trips, who are all like pieces of the book in certain ways. So, and I've it's been fun after putting it out, having people like guess who might be inspired by a character. Most people get it wrong. Yeah, it's for the people who they are. There's a lot of like, okay, cool, all right. I see
have you had anybody figure it out and you kind of had to backpedal a little bit, like, yeah, this is that person, but I wouldn't tell them that was?
No, because no one is
Okay,
someone
good.
like straight directly, you know.
Sure.
It's like they're composites, they're pieces, you know. So it's fun that way, you know. 'Cause you get to,
You're not throwing
you
anybody
get to
into the
sort of-
bus yet.
No, not with this one.
Okay, good. Nice. Nice. So what's next? What comes next? Like you have a travel blog, you're moving all over the place. We're currently in Greece. It's 3:00 in the morning. We have a book out, still filming skate parts. I mean, what else do you pack into this agenda? What's next for you?
Yeah, well, I just finished writing another one, which I'm still like in the revision process, basically just starting that. So we'll see if I end up doing something with it. But it was also another idea that I just wanted to like get out of my system. That was a big part of what Top of Mason was. It's like I had this idea and I needed to just like get it out and just see what the reaction would be. And so I finished another one. I think I'm just always going to be doing that, whether it's like part of my, I don't know, process. It honestly helps me sleep. Sometimes I'm just like, I'm like tossing and turning in bed and I just need to like zone out and think about something that's like unrelated to my life and my anxieties, and just focusing on sort of like these imaginary characters like really helps, which is, I don't know if anyone out there can relate to that, but yeah, so I'm gonna keep writing. I'm gonna keep just trying to find interesting places to skate, and yeah, hopefully have a video part done in the next couple months. We'll see. I mean, it's always just, you know, filming video parts is a whole different battle with what you know. We'll see when it comes to that, but
would you say like some of the editing processes of a book and a skate part would be one and the same for those people that maybe are way into like digital media versus writing things? Do you find yourself going through some of the same like checks and balances as you're editing video parts, where it's like, does it hit the same things I would want a book to hit? Do you think there's any similarities to the process?
I think there's similarities in, you might film something that you love and you're so psyched on, and then it ends up on the, you know, cutting room floor or whatever. It just doesn't get used, and it's like a little bit painful. It's like, oh no, I like that part of it. I wanted that in there, but then you just have to face it. It's like, no, it doesn't work. So I think that's something where I'd like definitely make the comparison for when you're like in the editing process, you know.
Nice. Yeah, and plus it's got to meet grandma standards, which I'm sure is a challenge in its own right after being 20 novels deep. So awesome. I've got a couple questions from the audience that are watching via the Twitch stream that I wanted to ask you, if you're cool with that. So Billy's Blonde's question is this your only book, or will there be more? You answered that a little bit. Is there anything you can talk about within the next book? Is it going to be a sequel? Is it going to be totally different?
Yeah, it'll be different. Just a new set of characters. I just have all these ideas for stories set within the skateboarding industry, like sort of a parallel industry, just like within the skateboarding context. I just like stories. I mean, a big motivation for writing this one was I didn't feel like I'd read a book or seen a movie that takes place within the skateboarding world that isn't necessarily about like going pro or about a skater like winning the contest, sort of that normal sports narrative story. And so I just wanted to write something different, and I have a few more ideas there, and we'll see if they come together. And then
nice. Awesome. So Billy's Blonde, keeping out for the next one. What else you got?
Cool. For books down the line, stories.
Yeah, like, do you plan on continuing the travel blog? Is that something you're going to keep doing as well?
Definitely. Yeah. I actually, this trip has been a challenge of like, how do I want to like turn this into like something to put on a blog? But I might actually, another thing I've thought about doing is just taking some of the travel blog stories and a few that I haven't put up and making like a little photo book out of it, just because it's like they're stories I'm pretty psyched on, and it'd be cool to just have that out there. So that might be something in the works soon too.
Nice. That's awesome. We've got Skate Vans 88. What is your favorite book that you have ever read?
Damn, that's a tough one. That's like asking your favorite skater or favorite video part. I feel like it
maybe we
changes
take
every day.
maybe we pick a genre, like maybe your favorite fiction story, if you've got one.
No, well, I'll go with the one I loved as a kid and then I reread as an adult and still loved it, which was Count of Monte Cristo. It's a long one, but I recommend it as a really like powerful book to read. And I'm a sucker for any book that like gets me a little weepy, and that one definitely did when I read it as an adult. I'm not positive that I read the unabridged version as a kid. I don't think I did, so I feel like I read it for the first time later, but it held up. So I recommend that one.
Very cool. All right, we got one more for you. We got Res Main. What advice would you give to someone who might be thinking about writing more?
So I would say what I said earlier, basically, is just like give yourself an excuse to write every day, whether it's, a journal, whether it's like what I was doing, which is just like make a little blog, just practice, like anything you want to work on, it's just gonna take practice. And just read as much as possible. I feel like that's one thing that's kind of taken for granted sometimes with people who want to write. They don't necessarily read what the kind of stuff they want to write. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's almost like with skating, you want to get good at skating, watch a bunch of videos and go skate.
Nice. Very cool. Walker, thank you so much for your time. 3:00 in the morning in Greece. We really appreciate you being here with us.
It's all good.
Yeah, of course. So stoked to see what comes next for you guys. Where can everybody get the book first and foremost, and where can they find out a little bit more about Old Friends?
Yeah, so actually all in one place. oldfriendsandco.com sells the book, and there's a lot more on there. We not only have some fitness gear, a little apparel. We're publishing every week. We're publishing content through Patreon related to fitness and wellness, primarily on injuries that are common for skateboarders, and that's in collaboration with Dr. Kyle Brown, who's curating that content. And so yeah, there's just a lot there if you're interested.
Nice. And give us the address one more time.
That's just oldfriendsandco.com.
Okay, perfect. Walker, I want to give you one last chance to plug everything before we wrap up here, before we wrap up the Twitch stream. What kind of stuff do you want people looking out for? What are the new things that they should keep an eye out for? And what else is next for everybody to keep an eye on?
Yeah, so a lot of good stuff coming through with Sovereign too. Just dropped a new board. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff through Zoomies as well. And yeah, we got a video in the works, and so that's really fun. So I got a little Old Friends video project I'm working on, and one for Sovereign. So those are going to be the main focuses right now.
Amazing. Thank you again, Walker, so much. Guys, following in the chat or watching the stream, number one, subscribe to Walker's Instagram, subscribe to Old Friends Instagram, subscribe to the Zoomies Twitch, subscribe to Zoomies Stash. Keep an eye out for more episodes of Between the Lines. We've got a lot of more exciting things coming out. Thank you, Walker, again so much for making the accommodations and being here for us. Really exciting to talk to you about this thing that, this work that you've put so much time into, and I hope everybody gets an opportunity to check it out. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and please stay tuned for the next episode of Zoomies Between the Lines. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Donnie. Hope to catch you in Chicago sometime.
Thanks, bud.